Shalum, Shalum and welcome. Welcome to White Rose family. My name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I am compelled to present before an awakening set-apart nation. This is part of the Judgment Warning and Instruction series of White Rose. My brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you that things will get worse before they get better. The storm will intensify, just as in the days of old, during the time of Mashyach, commonly known as Moses or Moshe. The plagues that came upon Egypt or Mitzrayim intensified until Pharaoh released the children of Yahuah, Yashar'al. Just as in days of past they intensified, we will witness such examples akin to those times occur now. We have moved beyond what is called types and shadows. The mistakes people have made when they say, is this the time? Are these the birth pains? We've moved beyond that, my brothers and sisters. There will be no return to the way life was yesterday, last week, last year, and before. The Almighty Father will intensify his judgment as far as his children, the set-apart children of Yashar'al. We are to interpret this as judgment beginning at the house of Yahuah first. It will bring our physical bodies to a weakness, our mental and emotional states to a weakness, to where in our physical natural weakness, we will rise up in the strength and power of Yahuah in Yahusha's name. And these bodies will become managed by our inward man as we are linked to the Almighty Father through Yahusha Mashyach. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, there is much work to be done. Judgment have many faces, and we must begin to ask ourselves, what is the Almighty Father saying to me, the one in the mirror, to you, to us, to his set-apart children during these final days? I am one who believes there will be a greater exodus, a final exodus, before the physical return of Yahusha Mashyach, and the processes that are necessary to ensure unity in the gathering, as well as the emergence of the 144,000 and great multitude, as mentioned in Revelation 7 chapter. Those processes to bring about that unity have begun, my brothers and sisters. In this installment of Judgment Warnings and Instructions, I want to bring your attention to the Jonah encounter. Some may say Yonah or Jonah, depending on what version of scriptures that you are reading. But before I get into this, my brothers and sisters, before I share that encounter I experienced, let me read the following. Warning and disclaimer. The information contained in White Rose family represent instructions and warnings to individuals who believe they are drawn by the Almighty Creator, Yahuah, to Yahusha Mashyach. And I use no other name, my brothers and sisters. The content presented centers around end-time realities. Please be advised, the site is not intended for children under 16 years of age due to its content. This is to be compliant with the video platforms that I use. Make no mistake, Isaiah 55:11 will have its place. By continuing forward, you agree to hold Symmanayah harmless of any influence and or actions that arise as a result of watching, listening, and reviewing the content presented. The views expressed do not reflect the owners, management, and or shareholders of this media platform. Please note, I am not affiliated with anyone or organization with similar names. With this said, my brothers and sisters, the Yonah encounter. My brothers and sisters, throughout the ages, we have heard various narratives regarding Jonah, his experience. We have had many people break it down in their specific teachings to educate us on what we are to learn about the history of Yonah and what we are to learn as in applying it to today. The most common analogy akin to Yonah is Yahusha's sacrifice and resurrection. But I want you to understand, O Yashar'al, there are many events that have occurred in the scriptures that are cyclical in nature. They have similarities. Not 100%, but similarities. We are told in the scriptures that the Almighty Father changes not. O Yashar'al, this is something that is explained to us. And if you search the scriptures, you will see various things that are similar. And I will present to you how I believe that even to this day, we are witnessing something that's akin to Jonah's experience. Come with me, O Yashar'al. Here, Set-apart Yashar'al. I had an encounter. Yes, my brothers and sisters. I had an encounter. An encounter that directed me to the story of Yonah. Let me read the story in part, O Yashar'al, starting with Jonah chapter 1, verse 1 through 7, and I will continue. The word of Yahuah came to Yonah, son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their evils have come up before me. But Yonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of Yahuah, and went down to Joppa, and found a ship going to Tarshish. And he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of Yahuah. And Yahuah sent out a great wind on the sea, and there was a great storm on the sea, so that the ship was thought to be broken. And the seamen were afraid, and each one cried out to his mighty one, and threw the cargo which was in the ship into the sea, to lighten the load. But Yonah had gone down into the lowest parts of the ship, and he lay down and was fast asleep. And the captain came to him and said to him, What do you mean, sleeper? Arise, cry out to your Almighty One. If so be that the Almighty One shall think about us, so that we do not perish. Jonah is thrown into the sea. And they said to each other, Come and let us cast lots, so that we know for who, so we do not perish. Jonah is thrown into the sea. And they said to each other, Come, let us cast lots, so that we know for whose sake the evil has come upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Yonah. Let me continue, my brothers and sisters, with the 8th verse. The 8th verse, and I'm in Yonah, the book of Yonah, or the book of Jonah, chapter 1, going with 8 to 15. So they said to him, Please explain to us, for whose sake is this evil upon us? What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you? Keep these questions in mind. Let me repeat them. What is your occupation? Where do you come from? I said to you, O Yashar'al, during these final days, we will know where we came from. What is your country? We will know our country, the promised land. From what people are you? We will know that we are indeed Yashar'al, the set-apart children of Yahuah. And there will be those grafted into the body of Yashar'al. Together we are made one by Yahusha Mashyach. We will know the answer to these questions. And it went on, and he said to them, Yonah is responding to the people on the ship, I am a Hebrew. I am fearing Yahuah, the Almighty One of the heavens, who made the sea and dry land. And the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, Why have you done this to us? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of Yahuah, for he had informed them. And they said to him, What are we to do? What are we to do to you to make the sea calm for us? For the sea was growing more stormy. And he said to them, Take me up and throw me into the sea, so that the sea becomes calm for you. For I know that this great storm is because of me. However, the men rowed hard to bring the ship to land, but were unable, for the sea continued to grow more stormy against them. I will submit a case, my brothers and sisters, that just as the men ignored what Yonah said to them, so is the world leaders ignoring what is said to them now regarding the judgment that is befalling the world as I speak. The men rowed hard, the storm intensified. That was 13. Verse 14, I'm in the first chapter. And they cried out unto Yahuah and said, we pray, O Yahuah, please let us not perish for this man's life, and do not lay on us innocent blood. For you, O Yahuah, have done as it pleased you. Notice that at one point they were praying to their mighty ones. But after Yonah explained to him who he was and who he was afraid of and who it was that had the power, they now cried to Yahuah. And then in the 15th verse, then they took Yonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped raging. My brothers and sisters, I submit to you, many who may have read the story and become familiar with it, there's more to be said, but I want to pause for a minute. Cast into the sea and into the body of a great fish. For those of you who know the story, I had an encounter the other day, and as I prayed, it was as though Yahusha is saying, Yashar'al have responded like Yonah. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, many of us starts with slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. But we fail to realize that Hebrews, Abrahym, were in North America before the transatlantic slave trade. Way before the slave trade, we were scattered to the four corners of the earth by the word of the Almighty Father, and it is written as so, as such. In this encounter, the Spirit of Yahusha said, Yashar'al was scattered by my voice, by my command, because of rebellion and disobedience. But for some reason, they responded as though, well, since you scattered us, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to speak the way we want to speak. We're going to talk the way we want to talk. We're going to worship how we want to worship. He never once said, I'm scattering you and I would leave you there. He said, I'm scattering you because of your obedience. Because of your disobedience, rather. Your disobedience. I'm scattering you because of your disobedience, not obeying me. So my brothers and sisters, it was like the Spirit of Yahushua was saying, I scattered Yashar'al, but I let them know that the promised land is something I've given to them. So the scattering was delivering one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, for them to be weakened and mindful that they must come back to the promised land at the appointed time. But Yashar'al and his disobedience continue to grow in wickedness. We see the idols, the totem poles that quote unquote Native Americans created. I submit to you, Yashar'al was on the North American continent before any other nation. The narrative that the others have given us was a result of us succumbing to false narratives. We see where Yashar'al created big heads in the Aztec idols and statues. They even built pyramids in the Western Hemisphere. This was the same as with Yonah. When the Most High when the Almighty Father Yahuah gave Yonah something to deliver, a message to say, he ran and he fled and got on the ship where he left, running from what he was supposed to do. And I say to you, O Yashar'al, out of our disobedience, we were scattered because of disobedience. That's just as Yonah fleeing what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to repent and return unto the Almighty Father. And I will present that case in this installment. Cast into the sea. If you search the scriptures, you'll see that sea, water, is akin to words. And it's also akin to the words of Yahuah. So just as Yonah went into the sea, got on a ship, was riding on the ship, before he was cast into the sea and into the belly of the great fish, so did Yashar'al go into areas where they multiplied, and there was a sea of words and languages, narratives and beliefs and wickedness. And it became strong and stronger. And the Most High showed me that even now we have orders and instructions, but we are in the sea of words and noise, everyone with an opinion, everyone with different perspectives on what we're supposed to do to worship and obey the Almighty Father, everyone with a specific and different angle as it relates to end time prophecies. This is our sea, and it is growing stormier and stormier as the judgment of the Almighty Father is upon us. Famine, pestilence, and disease is ramping up and will intensify, my brothers and sisters. And we are in this sea of rhetoric, this sea of words, this sea of different beliefs. It is akin to the story of Yonah. Let me continue regarding this story, O Yashar'al. The first chapter of Jonah, verse 17 says, "But Yahuah appointed a great fish to swallow Yonah, and Yonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights." Now, in this regard, my brothers and sisters, we see that it is akin to what happened with Yahusha Mashyach, how in his sacrifice, it was 3 days and 3 nights before his resurrection occurred. But I will submit to you something similar. Something similar will occur. In this judgment, during these intense times, I will submit, my brothers and sisters, that in the final Exodus, the greater Exodus, as Yashar'al, as the 144,000 in great multitude begin to be gathered, that those on the Western Hemisphere and various other parts of the world will find ourselves on ships. And I believe many of them will be container ships carrying large numbers of set-apart children of Yashar'al. Container ships designed to carry us back to the promised land. And while we journey on these container ships back towards the promised land, it will be as one in the belly of a fish, but these will be as an iron fish. And during that journey, O Yashar'al, it will be a time of meditation, prayer. It will be a time of communication, a time of learning. For when we reach our destination, we will walk in more obedience to the Almighty Father. And let me continue with the story of Yonah. Pray and seek to discern the connections. Yonah prayed to Yahuah, his Almighty One, from the stomach of the fish. I'm in chapter 2, verse 1 through 10 now. And he said, "I called to Yahuah because of my distress, and he answered me from the stomach of the grave. I cried, and you heard my voice. For you threw me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. All your breakers and your waves passed over me. So I said, I have been driven away from your eyes. Will I ever look again towards your set-apart Hekel, or temple, some would say? Waters encompassed me about life. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the base of the mountains. The earth with its bars were behind me forever. But you brought up my life from the pit. O Yahuah, my Almighty One. When my life fainted within me, I remembered Yahuah, and my prayer went up to you into your set-apart temple. Those observing false worthlessness forsake their own loving commitment. But I slaughter to you with the voice of thanksgiving. I pray what I have vowed. Deliverance is of Yahuah." Then Yahuah spoke to the fish, and it vomited Yonah onto dry land. I submit to you, O Yashar'al, our journey in the iron fish, container ships, as we move towards the promised land, we will have encounters of prayer. We will be humbled. We will be strengthened in spirit. And much will transpire, for it will take days to reach, for those on the Western Hemisphere to reach the promised land. Some will get there sooner than others. But make no mistake, the tribe of Yehudah has the scepter. The tribe of Yahuah has been appointed to lead the other 12 nations. And most of Yehudah is in the Western Hemisphere. Pray and watch. Proof will come as leadership rise, as the rest of the world look for the return of Yehudah. For Yehudah has the scepter. Yehudah will lead. My brothers and sisters, obedience emerge. Obedience emerges. A message is delivered as ordered. You see, my brothers and sisters, as we travel back to the promised land during the final Exodus, there will be those who are left behind, some to echo messages of information from the Almighty Father to know that in spite of the widespread destruction and death, they have a place in everlasting life with him. And those that will travel back to the promised land will understand it's not just getting there, exhaling, and then we sit back and be laid back. Obedience. We will deliver the messages to one another. We will be used by the Almighty Father working in us, through us, as we become strengthened in our worship and obedience, O Yashar'al. Let me read Jonah chapter 3, verse 1 through 4. Jonah chapter 3, verse 1 through 4. And the word of Yahuah came to Yonah the second time, saying, Arise. So now he's back on dry land. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it the message that I am speaking to you. And Yonah arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of Yahuah. Now Nineveh was a great city before the Almighty One, of 3 days' journey. And Yonah began to go into the city on the first day's walk, and he cried out and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. You see, Yonah came to a point of obedience. And so will we in these final days. My brothers and sisters, in my encounter, the Spirit of Yahusha educated me. What we are witnessing right now is the storm intensifying in this sea of noise and words. And we will get on the iron fish, container ships, and we will cross the seas, the water, while noise is still going across the face of the earth, while there are different opinions and different point of reference and different interpretations. We will travel back to the promised land, those whom he has chosen for his esteem, as it is written in Isaiah 43. Know this, O Yashar'al, obedience will come. Consider this, my brothers and sisters. Consider our current condition and response. Are we avoiding the living voice of Abba Yahuah? I believe we are. We are distracted. Some of us are worried and perplexed. Some of us are fearful of man more so than fearful of Yahuah because of ill teachings. People saying, I don't fear anything. They should qualify and say, I don't fear what man can do, but I fear Yahuah. I've even witnessed some so-called spiritual or religious leaders trying to rebuke the famine and pestilence that is in COVID-19. Are we not aware that in the days of Mashyach, Yahuah ordered the famine and pestilence? Yahuah ordered the conditions such that he may be magnified through Mashyach or Moses. We cannot rebuke the power of the Almighty One. Such contradiction in those who call themselves leaders who have tried to rebuke it. I've even heard someone of a different persuasion, religious group, call it a micro disease, a little demon. My brothers and sisters, beware, for those who falsely accuse the actions of the Almighty Father have their judgment, and it will be severe in nature. It will bring about the correction that is necessary, whether from them repenting or them being removed from the face of the earth, whether it be sickness or death. Correction will come, O Yashar'al. Judgment has begun at the house of Yahuah. Anyone who think that the things that he ordered, that they can rebuke Yahuah, will face a terrible end. Since judgment begins at the house of Yahuah, are we the cause of the current judgment? Indeed. You see, my brothers and sisters, those who are not a part of Yashar'al, they have their judgment. They have their appointed times. The judgment, the storms that are coming now are for our sake, to get us in line, to yield. Look at these scriptures, my brothers and sisters. Every time famine and pestilence came, it brought weakness upon Yashar'al to the point where they began to turn back to Yahuah. Are we not aware when it said, if my people that are called by my name will humble themselves and seek my face, how he will heal the land? People think that's the land wherever we have our feet. That's not so. He's talking about the promised land, my brothers and sisters. It's not talking about wherever we are. Could our final exodus be considered by some a casting out from among other nations? In other words, will the global leaders acknowledge the true Hebrews, the true Abrahym? Will the global leaders recognize that the judgment that is intensifying is because of us? Will they be then willing to cast us out from among them? Let us go. Release the children of Yahuah to go to the set-apart mountain to worship and obey Yahuah where he has designated us to go. Will our journey be akin to Yonah being in the belly of the great fish, but we will be in the belly of container ships as we journey back? When the final exodus is fulfilled, will there be obedience to Abba Yahuah demonstrated? Indeed, they will. And the calm that those that were on the ship with Yonah, the calm that they received after Yonah was cast off the boat, it's going to be akin to a calm to world leaders to form their one world government and begin to implement the mark of the beast. You see, so they, in their mind, have a calm. But they will know of our existence. They will know where we are headed. They will know where our destination is. And the time will come when they will ultimately resent us and march against the set-apart children of Yahuah. This is the narrative that the Almighty Father gave to me in this encounter. In the name of Yahusha, I present it to you, O Yashar'al. Do we anticipate a deliverance coming? Yes, indeed. Will we or are we experiencing discipline from Abba Yahuah? Soon and very soon, Yashar'al. Soon and very soon, the world will recognize who we are and acknowledge us. Are you ready, my brothers and sisters? Are you ready to see? Now you might say, what does this have to do with judgment and warnings? You may ask yourself these questions, my brothers and sisters. And I say to you, as I mention always, the importance of asking questions. Consider this, my brothers and sisters. Believe end times will prove that we are avoiding Abba Yahuah's living orders. But out of his discipline, out of his promised discipline, out of judgment will arise a set-apart, more refined body of the children of Yashar'al, a set-apart nation, powerful in the strength and might of the Almighty Father. We will grow to come away from avoiding his living orders and begin to march towards the direction which he hath established for us, O Yashar'al. What say you? Again, are we experiencing discipline from the Almighty Father? I say we are. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, do you see the connection? Do you see the importance of yielding? Do you see the importance of moving towards obeying what is said? My brothers and sisters, end times will prove. It will prove living encounters with the Spirit of Yahusha exists. You might say, well, what does this message have to do with judgment and warning? The warning is to stop struggling and fighting, to stop running from the living orders of the Almighty Father. The warning is to know that the storm is going to get intensified. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We are entering into birth pains, O Yashar'al. The warning is to yield to the voice of the Spirit of Yahuah sent in Yahusha's name, to recognize the chosen ones. The warning is the need to examine and vet one another, starting with the one in the mirror, asking questions, judging ourselves as the Spirit of Yahushua works in us to judge ourselves. As we move together, we judge one another according to the scriptures as they are made alive. And we will witness unity come and emerge as a result of such. End times will prove living encounters with the Spirit of Yahusha exists. Consider this, O Yashar'al, consider these words. The coronavirus, COVID-19. This is an update. These numbers are fluid, but as of what is known as the 4th month, according to the Gregorian calendar, the 11th day, 2020, 3:13 p.m. As of 3:13 p.m. on 4/11/2020, worldwide total infected that is reported, it's over 1.7 million people. To read the number specifically, is 1,765,500 individuals infected with COVID-19. Now, let me pause for a minute, my brothers and sisters, because just as this virus has affected this many people, Ebola still exists, measles still exists, cancer, diabetes still exists, multiple sclerosis exists. Many other diseases still exist. Now add them onto the reported worldwide total infected, and you have massive numbers of people that are infected with various diseases. The number of deaths from COVID-19, coronavirus, 107,918. These are global numbers. In the United States alone, over 500,000, 524,242 individuals are infected. This is what is reported. The number of deaths is over 21,366 deaths reported as of 4/11/2020, 3:13 p.m. The source I'm using is the worldometer.info/coronavirus. There are no known cures for this virus. The numbers are adding up, and it will prove to bring extreme humbling times. The time is now to discern true chosen leaders and begin to prepare to gather together, O Yashar'al. Extreme humbling times, civil unrest, economic collapse, deaths, wars, famine, and pestilence. It will intensify until the global leaders acknowledge Yashar'al and release us to go to the promised land to worship and obey in the region that was given to us, who are true Hebrews, and those who are grafted in by Yahusha Mashyach, together as one set-apart nation. When the world acknowledges us and let the people of Yahuah go, then the way will be made even more for them to expeditiously roll out the fullness of the anti-Messiah and false prophet. But keep in mind, 2 Thessalonians 2:7, that say that until he that restrained is removed, we won't see the fullness of the anti-Messiah. So what is happening now, O Yashar'al, things will begin to ramp up and intensify and intensify. And just as those on the ship with Yonah were praying to their Almighty Ones, we see across the planet people of many religious backgrounds praying to the one that they believe is the Almighty One, praying to their Almighty One. But when the world acknowledged the true Hebrews, when they acknowledged the true Abrahym, when they acknowledged Goym, who together that are made one by Yahusha Mashyach, black and white, Hispanic, French, whether it be Chinese, Japanese, Australian, whether it be Swedes or Canadians, whether it be Puerto Ricans or Jamaicans, many diverse nations, many tongues, as it is mentioned in Revelation 7:9. Those who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father. We are brothers and sisters. We are made one by Yahusha Mashyach. And the judgment at the house of Yahuah is what we are witnessing. For we are witnessing, my brothers and sisters, our mental, our physical state being placed in check. Let me ask you, my brothers and sisters, are you satisfied with the instructions you're getting from your moray, your pastor, your bishop, your spiritual leader? Are you receiving the instructions to equip you with the knowledge that is necessary for what you must do? Are you seeing them affirm or reaffirm or confirm that they bear witness that the Spirit of Yahusha is working in you? Are they providing you with information in the event of their demise that you'll know what to do? And if you are a leader, are you teaching your flock what is expected from the Almighty Father? Are you teaching them how to be obedient to the living voice of the Spirit of Yahusha? For out of obedience to him, He is lifted up. Yahusha is lifted up, and he will draw us together. My brothers and sisters, extreme humbling times. Look around. Even now, there's dialogue of saying, well, what will a post-coronavirus life look like? How are we going to jumpstart the economy again? How are we going to get back to norm? And many have already conceded, knowing there will be no such thing as getting back to the norm. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, we have a destination. We have work to do. Consider Isaiah 11:12. He shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Yashar'al, and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, things will get intense. More intense than what we are witnessing now. And consider this, my brothers and sisters. I read it once, and I am compelled to present it again. Amos 4th chapter, verse 6 through 12. Amos 4th chapter, verse 6 through 12. And I also gave you cleanness of teeth. To have clean teeth, my brothers and sisters, is to not have anything to eat. He's speaking of famine in all your cities, and lack of bread in all your places. But you did not turn back to me, declares Yahuwah. And I also withheld rain from you 3 new moons before the harvest. Then I would send rain on one city, and on another city I would not send rain. One part was rained upon, and where it did not rain, the part would dry up. I submit to you, O Yashar'al. Look at the weather patterns and what man called climate change and global warming. Are we not seeing it rain in some areas, in other areas no rain? And as it dries up, are we not seeing fire break out? Then 2 or 3 cities would wander to another city to drink water, but they were not satisfied. But you did not turn back to me, declares Yahuwah. He's stating that out of the conditions I presented, we did not turn back to him. I have stricken you with blight and with mildew. The creeping locust devoured your many gardens and your vineyards and your fig trees, your olive trees, but you did not turn back to me, declares Yahuwah. Are we not witnessing a rise of locusts devouring? It's happening in the U.S. just as it is in Africa, the eastern part of Africa, the Middle East, and soon, if not already there in China. The locusts have begun to grow in numbers greater than we've ever seen before, O Yashar'al. He goes on in the 10th verse, I have sent among you a plague in the way of Mitzrayim, saying just like Egypt, or just like Mitzrayim, I'm sending a plague. I have killed your young men with a sword, along with your captured horses, and I have made the stench of your camps come up into your nostrils, but you did not turn back to me, says Yahuwah. And some may say, how did the young men die? We have young men dying right now, my brothers and sisters, out of uncontrolled wars. We have young men dying now, fighting one another, even in the streets of their respective countries. Rioting and chaos have begun. Some cases it's widespread. But yet we do not see massive numbers of Yashar'al turning back to him. For there are indeed some of his children as prodigal sons out in the wild, so to speak, that he is drawing and will draw and will deliver out of such strongholds. He goes on to say, I have overthrown some of you as the Almighty One overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and you were like a burning stick plucked from the burning. Have there not been deaths due to wildfires? Have we not witnessed death due to the fires of war, due to volcanic activity? But we have not returned to him. He goes on to say, therefore I am doing this to you, O Yashar'al, and because I do this to you, prepare to meet your Almighty One, O Yashar'al. My brothers and sisters, it is important for us to recognize the need to discern what is happening before us. Let us be wise. There is no return to the ways things were before COVID-19. We are beginning to witness things we may have easily spoken of, but did not embrace the realities of the details and processes that will occur before our return. Many of us are eager to witness the final exodus, Many of us desire to be among the ranks of those returned. Some of us has even embraced the need to be a part of the final exodus, more so than realizing that we're not to seek to gain these lives for our own sake, but to lose our lives for Yahusha's sake. In other words, whatsoever he will, whatsoever he desires, that is what we should be praying. This is what we should be seeking to discern. Those who will be a part of the final exodus, it's not going to be what some would call a cakewalk or easy. Though we will shout hallelujah, this journey will come with challenges and experiences that will stretch our abilities, that will prove that we are being restored in the dominion that was assigned us by the Almighty Father in order to endure what is to be. And those of us who will be martyrs, gird up, my brothers and sisters, prepare to be sacrificed for Yahusha's name. Prepare to witness those that are unlearned, who have been led astray. Prepare to witness those who are our brothers and sisters, unbelieving, still on milk, that will physically perish. But their spirit will meet the Most High, and they will be among us. I'm speaking of our brothers and sisters. For there are those who desire to do the will of the Almighty Father, but out of being unlearned, unskillful, still on milk, rebellious, what we see with our eyes and ears might show us something to think that they're not our brothers and sisters. But we're not to look back and ponder on that. As I mentioned before and shared before, we are to look forward. Let our eyelids and our eyes face forward, not looking back, O Yashar'al. For if we look back too much and too long, we will succumb to grief, depression, maybe even anger. This plan belongs to the Almighty Father, my brothers and sisters. There is no returning back to the way things were. Hear this, O Yashar'al, and know this. Remember, my brothers and sisters, end times are real. There will be final decisions that will prove to require us to look forward and not be weighted down by what occurred. I'm not making light of anyone's death or the death of a loved one. I'm not making light of the challenging conditions ahead. My instructions, as this says, judgment, warnings, and instructions. I'm warning you, O Yashar'al. I'm warning us of what to expect and to know that the Most High will bring us to the refinement, the discipline that is necessary to fulfill what he has promised us. My instructions is to yield to him, to examine, to vet, to ask questions. My instructions to Yashar'al is to get beyond entertainment, playing games, and showing off, to fulfill your own utilities and feel goods. My instructions are to move into sincerity as we are in a battle that is intensifying. Looking forward, discerning, asking questions and more questions, praying, seeking to discern, respond with accuracy, O Yashar'al. These are my instructions to an awakening people. Be mindful of these words, O Yashar'al. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, prepare to witness evidence and proof. And my question is, will you be in position? Are you establishing a ready mind, body, and soul to be in the correct position, to be where you're supposed to be when the pathway is blazed open for the set-apart children to begin to come together? I believe there will be anointed leaders chosen by the Almighty Father that will contribute to the instructions that are given by the Almighty Father in Yahusha's name to echo to the world, let my people go, says the Almighty Father. To echo these words such that when the world leader acknowledge who the true Hebrews are, the true Abrahym of Yahuah, then we will recognize individuals being used to lead us as we begin to come together to the point and place, to the position where the Most High will have us. Discern, O Yashar'al. Consider these words as I come to an end. Amos 9th chapter verses 8 and 9 says, look, the eyes of Master Yahuah are on the sinful reign. I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except I do not completely destroy the house of Yaakov, declares Yahuah. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Yashar'al among all nations as one sift with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. And then in Proverbs 4:25, let your eyes look forward and your eyelids look straight before you. My brothers and sisters, in this sifting that I mentioned, he is speaking not a grain that he has established for his esteem to fulfill end time prophecies. This is what it means. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go back to the earth. That would be contradictory to scriptures. It doesn't mean that you will not die. It doesn't mean that everybody will not physically face death at some point in time, with the exception of those who are physically alive upon the return of Yahusha Mashyach, who will be raised up during resurrection time. Pray, my brothers and sisters, ask questions, seek to understand and discern all that keeps the scriptures connected and whole. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, we have an example to understand. Proverbs 4:25 say, let your eyelids look forward and your eyelids look straight before you. Choose wisely, O set-apart nation, Yashar'al. You have been listening to the Yonah encounter, Jonah encounter, warnings and instructions. These days are real. Face the realities of what's unfolding, O Yashar'al. Draw close to those whom you are chosen to lead and serve, or who are chosen to lead and serve you. We will see when the time comes. There will be the anointed who will gather Yashar'al in part, and we will merge into a large, great set-apart nation, massive in numbers. It will be a great multitude of many nations, kindreds, and tongues, as Revelation 7:9 mentions. It will be 144,000. But when you total that to the nearly 8 billion people on the planet, those tens of millions of people will only represent a remnant. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, take heed to these words. Choose what you will do as these words and words akin to these reach you. Look at what occurred with Yonah and consider our ways, O Yashar'al. I salute your patience, your tolerance, your hunger for set-apartness. I salute your love for the Almighty Father Yahuah. I know of no other direction to turn. To you, my brothers and sisters, heed these words and witness the benefits and or consequences, depending on how you manage the messages from the Almighty Father that come to your ears, to your eyes. Until such as time as next time, my brothers and sisters, I say to you, if you are hearing anything that resembles life, that draws and pushes you to the Almighty Father, help me spread the words that I have been given. Subscribe and share, O Yashar'al. Move as you believe you are influenced. Pursue obedience. Will you help me? If you believe that there is no life from me, coming from me, then disregard these words. But I ask for your help. By subscribing and sharing, it contributes to expediting the words that I am compelled to present. On that note, I say thank you. Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Shalom.